It says the need of the GTA is now greater.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kingston Police Services Board meeting 2409 being held on Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Is congratulate and welcome Matt Funnell as Kingston's Deputy Chief and invite the board public swearing Superior Court today. Presentation, there's none. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Any? Very good. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Yeah. Shep, all in favor? If I can get the minutes from meeting 2408 held on July 18th, 2024 be adopted. Yeah, Jimmy, all in favor? Thank you. And then through the communications, that the following communications get accepted from the Ministry of the Solicitor General Office, the Mayor, Canadian Association of Police Governance, the Office of NPP Tetsu, Kingston and the Islands, the Kingston Police Pipe Band, and the Office of the Chief of Police be received. Any questions about any of the communications? Then I'd just like to bring up number 7 of the communications. That is the training for the board members is due by September 3rd, 2024. And that was for the, thank you, Attic, yep, training. Okay. And talk about the Office of the Chief of Police, letter from Chief Fraser dated September 10th, 2024, requesting the board grant the chief delegate authority to sign grant applications and reports.
Yeah, certainly. And this is more of just an ask to the board, but we wanted to formalize it. We do a lot of grants. Most of the time, if there's late minute changes, we know we have to track down people to get signatures. And we've noticed more recently that there's been a lot because there's a lot of grants that we apply for. So we're not trying to circumvent the board. It's just those last minute kind of issues where we're chasing the clock, and then we have to try and certainly work with Lori, who's been tremendous, and then try and find the chair or the vice chair or someone from the board to assist. And I know that it's a great process because the board needs to be involved, but we might be able to streamline it a little bit by I could sign off on some of those. Of course, if there's a legal indemnification or if it is a board signatory required, that would never change. But for some of them, if we had that, we will always keep the board apprised of what we've applied for, what we've been successful for. We will always provide the reports, but just streamline that signatory process. There's nothing in law preventing it. I know it was a process that we had done, and it was obviously done for a reason. And I'm hoping that we could consider that. And we certainly respect the board's decision either way. It's just bringing it to your attention. We might be able to help you out and help us out a little bit moving forward. That's it.
Okay. I guess just if there was terms of reference that were involved with it, just, you know, when it would be signed, when not signed, and just so it's like written as in like, so it's defined. Go ahead.
We can draft the comprehensive delegated authority bylaw, and that'll encompass more things than just signing of grant applications, etc. And we'll bring it, the policy committee will bring it back to the November meeting.
Board's okay with that? Good. Okay. Good. Then we'll move on to information reports. I would ask that Chief Fraser or Deputy Funnell, I would either like to speak to any of the reports. Thank you.
Certainly, and I will speak to that comment first, and welcome, Matt. I know it was a long process for the board. Thank you. And we are hit the ground running, obviously. Matt started as Deputy Chief on Tuesday, and I told him to be prepared to present on everything. And then I kind of chuckled. I said, we won't throw you to the wolves just yet. But, and of course, Matt has taken the lead on everything that has occurred in the last couple of weeks. So my hat's off to you and the team that dealt with that. And I said I would be the point for today's board meeting, but you will see Matt providing a lot more input in the future. And I know he has commentary here as well but I let him focus on other things today. But I just want to thank the board as well for their process and moving the ball forward. And we're coming together. So thank you so much. So first report we have is the collision report.
Oh,
Our collision report. So, our collision reporting is done for us by Accident Support Services. And of course, we have an Accident Support Services counter here. So a lot of the accidents are, specifically addressed at the front counter. So officers, are not required necessarily to be at every motor vehicle collision. In fact, the province has just upped it used to be $2,000 and they're upping the amount of damage that a person can come and just report on their own. So the collision reports we like to submit and provide them to our community and to our board. They're a comprehensive report. They're done for us and we just get that. So we have the first 2 quarters there, which outline, for people who don't want to read the whole report, if they go, there's a page that outlines the top intersections where the most collisions occur. And it's interesting because the most collisions may be 2 or 3. When I'm saying the most collisions, people are probably anticipating hundreds. But they do identify areas, and then of course sharing that with the city so they can look at infrastructure if there's infrastructure changes required, et cetera. So the reports are there for everybody to view. They break down from time of day to driver actions to weather to pedestrians to alcohol, what the offenses are and things like that. And I think it doesn't matter what community you're in. Most accidents occur in the middle of the day on a nice day. And we always think it's going to be in the winter when it's icy, but we know when it's miserable weather that drivers pay attention to driving. And when it's nice, they pay attention to a lot of other things other than driving. So barring any questions on that, the report's there for the consumption and for people to review.
Anything in particular from that report that you want to highlight for us that strikes you as chief that we would want to pay particular attention to?
Yeah, it's interesting because having worked in a couple of different communities, which is kind of interesting, is when you look at the top intersections, in these 2 reports, they'll identify Sir John A. Macdonald. And then from the 401, if you just keep traveling, it's each intersection. So people traveling on Sir John A, be extra cautious. Sometimes it's a floating target. It'll move quarter to quarter. And oftentimes you'll see in the top 10, just depends. The top 10 intersections remain the top 10 intersections, and they just may differ in rank. So I think, for me, obviously that's one of the biggest things for people to go and look at, because you can take extra precautions when you get to those locations. And unfortunately, it's a little bit of everything there, whether it's running a red light or it's, someone not paying attention and failing to stop for the car that stopped at the red light, or improper turns and things like that. So I think that's really where the meat and potatoes of it really come in. And it doesn't matter. It's the same in every community where the top 10 intersections generally just float around. And then the other thing is, when you look, it's natural Thursday, Friday afternoons. Oftentimes there's an increase in traffic and an increase in collisions and things like that. So it just gives people an opportunity, if you do review it, that you can take some extra caution. If this is a very bad intersection where there's, maybe more incidents than other locations. And once again, I'm not meaning hundreds, there might be 2 or 3, but just that you can take extra caution. So I think that's really where it is. And things change quarter to quarter, but for the most part, kind of remain static as well. So.
thanks.
The next report would be the collection of identifying information in certain circumstances. And we have a reviewer who's required by legislation to review all of our, I guess for lack of a better term, this is the legislation that came in to prevent street checks. And Scott Huffman does that. Sergeant Huffman does a tremendous job. And I know he commented, we're reporting here that there was no deviations from the policy and legislation as directed to our staff. We continue to educate our staff regarding this legislation. Our reviewer continues to ensure that we're compliant with the legislation. And in fact, Sergeant Huffman wanted me to pass along his appreciation to our staff, who are taking it seriously and are working together to educate each other, and are often can be heard discussing certain things about the legislation. And I know when he's done his review and spoke to officers, that people are aware of it, understand it, and ensuring that we're compliant. Our next report, our strategic plan update. And once again, I had the opportunity to speak with Global this morning about the strategic plan, and you know, it's great to have a robust plan that works as a roadmap for our staff. We continue through our senior officers and through our management to push the action plans to our staff. And you know, when we discuss what are my expectations, it's good when you can hand a strategic plan over and go, here's the goals and objectives of the police board. So we're obviously, we can't do everything all at once. So we're tackling our action plans as we can. And, you know, we're starting to see some traction with that. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes if we just want to talk about downtown as one of our action plans to reduce the crime downtown and establish a beat officer, which we've done, establish an MOU between the city and the DBIA, which we have done, and then have a larger presence in the downtown, which we have done. The DBIA has a reporting mechanism that they use to report on their end crimes. They have seen a steady decline since we've had an officer there. That will kind of conflict with us because our officers down there increasing the number of arrests, therefore skewing the numbers to make it look like crime is increasing, when in fact, when you apply that enforcement tool to a specific area, it will skew it at the beginning, but the consistent effort in there will then, you'll plateau and we should be able to see the results. But we know that it's having a good effect downtown. There will be things that come up that are blips, and but when we can see some steady, kind of steady decline is always good. And certainly in the downtown area, that presence being also amplified with the additional resources of bylaw and street outreach and those type of things. They're more force multipliers for us. And we've been in the position where we've had to add extra resources even to the beat officer to get the desired results we want to see downtown. Of course, we can't do it all the time, but we're seeing an increase in enforcement, which we've had to follow up on. And, you know, you can see in our media releases, generally the people that we're dealing with it's not the first time we've dealt with them. Oftentimes they might be into bail hearings multiple times in 1 week, but eventually we will get them so they can, you know, I know behind the City Hall in the Market Square was an issue, and we were dealing with people repeatedly, and we just have to keep bringing them before the courts until there's conditions put on. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the only answer. And so needless to say, there's lots going on. There's a lot more than just the downtown in our strategic plan. We've been working on recruiting. We've been working on hiring. And, you know, in particular, I know it's outlined hiring diverse community members so we can be representative of our community. And what we have found is that not a lot of people from different backgrounds or different ethnicities want to get into policing as a police officer, but they do want to get into policing to see what it's like as a civilian member. We've had some great success in recruiting diverse members who are bringing in as civilian members, and they're going to be able to see what happens in a police service and what's going on with our hope is that they may decide in the future to become a police officer. And I know that's something the board wanted us working on, and we are working diligently on it. And we've created our new website. So we're, you know, with Join KP, we've got that online now. So a number of other things I could probably go on, but I know it's all documented in the report. We've tried to give you the comprehensive report we could with what's going on from all of our senior officers, all of our staff sergeants, drilling right down to our civilian staff and reaching out to everybody so they know it's there. On our employee entrance board, a lot of our action plans get looped through all of the daily updates. So it's always there for our staff to see. And we'll continue doing that in our NCO meetings. We continue to bring the strategic plan forward so everyone knows. And when they say, what's my expectations, we can say, here we go. Anything in one of the 5 action plans is a great start. So that's where we're sitting now. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Jimmy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Chief, you mentioned on this report that you found is more easy and more people are interested to get into the civilian side of that. But I hope it's not going to eliminate the options for still continue to promote that we need people on the streets as well on the uniform, in the uniform side as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that was just an update as to what we've seen in this last, the last quarter, what we've observed. So just passing an observation, we're still keenly aware, and we are out doing our best to recruit people at various events through the community. And then with our new website going live, on trying to get to some, come up with new ideas to get to different communities. And it's really important that we get there and people understand what we're trying to accomplish. And you know what? Kingston is a great place to live. And why wouldn't you want to live here? So we got a lot to offer, and we'll continue to do that for sure.
And it's a great police service to join to serve the community as well.
There you go. Thank you.
Chief, thanks for the report. You made a really interesting point about how do we measure where crime is going, and you mentioned about how calls for service is not necessarily the best measure. In fact, one of the things we've talked about around this table is that sometimes it can get to a point where people get discouraged if they don't see change and they stop reporting, and so calls go down, but that doesn't mean things are getting better. Sometimes things actually get worse.
Mhm.
Is there any sort of complementary measure, anything that other police forces use besides just calls for service that can give us a better picture for what's actually happening, whether it's in the downtown or in the community?
I think when it depends what metric what you want to compare, because when you look at, when you look at policing functions and you look at crime in a community, what affects the east end of Kingston may be acutely different than what affects the west end of Kingston, which is acutely different than what is a downtown. And I think the board, and wisely the board in the strategic plan, kind of excise downtown as its own specific area, because it really encompasses a large area that it houses a number of complex different needs, whether it's post-secondary education, business, commercial properties, whether it's homelessness, unhoused people, all of these things that take place, traffic, speeding. It's a number of different things. So I think it's difficult globally to compare, but for us, things that we've kind of changed, for example, is we used to report the number of calls we would get in a day, but we were only reporting the number of calls we would get and dispatch an officer. It's dramatically different. If in a 24-hour period, you're responding, we would document we've responded to 109 calls, but in reality, there has been 189 calls, of which some were diverted, because I know part of our action plan is to divert some low risk crimes that can be handled by someone else. So where a noise complaint may come in and we divert that to bylaw, that's somewhere where we're capturing the number of calls, but we weren't capturing it properly because we were just capturing the number we dispatched. Then on the other side is, when we talk about crime prevention, let's use the analogy of people ask, hey, if we put cameras up, will that deter crime? Well, how can we measure that? Because we don't know the criminal who was going to commit the crime looked at the camera. I'm not doing that now. There's a camera here. We don't know if that ever happens, but what we do know, it helps us possibly solve it. So right now, for example, a lot of our petty theft crimes, what we call are minor thefts, we get reported after the fact and we put the picture out and we solve that. Where we have our officers identifying who they are. So I think it's really hard to say, here's what this community is doing, here's what this community, because every community is different. There are things that we do share, but I know that some places like Halton Region, for example, that came up with a retail theft unit that, they have these people are only dedicated to retail theft. Then you can really capture what's being reported and establishing those relationships with the businesses. You're not going to capture it all, because you never will, because there's some people who will not report it and there's others that will report everything. So it's really a moving target. But what we do is encourage people, if something does happen, to give up means that nothing can ever really be improved. If we give up, we can't give up. And as a community, we are here. You can call. You're not bugging us. And I know people say, I know you're busy and I don't want to bother you with this. Like bicycle thefts, for example, bicycle thefts are through the roof. But we have a great program with Garage 529 to solve that. And we have great beat officers. One of our officers who's very beat officer and very into cycling, he can spot these bikes from a mile away, and we're solving those type of things. So if people didn't report it, and he's even solving them when they're not reported, because he knows the value of a bicycle, he knows that this bicycle may have been from a previous offense, then you run the serial number and find it. So it's really tough, but we try and look at what other communities are doing. Can that be done here? Does it make sense? And if it does, then hey, we're always open. And I think we're doing a great job communication wise with our staff as well. You know, we are saying to our staff, if you have an idea, please let us know, because there's tons of people out there with great ideas. Or if somebody comes to you from the street and says, hey, why don't you try this? We're not opposed to trying anything. And I think we're at this stage in the world now in 2024 where we've got to start trying as much things as we can within our ability. So I hope I haven't talked around the bush trying to talk about a number of things, but when we can capture what's really going on, we encourage people to call us, because then it is captured for sure. You can go online, you can make a report online. It will be captured and it's there. And then sometimes we get to follow up. For a good example is break and enters, where we'll have an officer send out a message saying, I apprehended an individual who was doing a break and enter, and he had a backpack full of property. And some of them had tags on it, some of it's not, but we know that it's part of stolen property. Has anybody had a break and enter reported to them with this, and this missing? And if that person has reported it, we can collate it, put it together and go, okay, we've just solved that one. If they don't report it, it ends up at our auction, so we continually ask the public to keep working and look out for your neighbors, neighborhood watch and things like that. Check on your neighbors, look out for your neighbors, and together we can be safer.
Thank you. And Jimmy, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. The question about the increasing traffic issues due to the road safety. Are we doing anything extra or special measures we are putting in place, or any mechanism we putting in place to deal with this growing problem on the roads?
Yeah, and you know what? That's something that we wrestle with all the time, because the number of vehicles, the number of traffic, and the number of streets, and that is something that affects our community from one end to the other. So we utilize our community volunteers, which I think is a good program, and I think it's good when people call in a complaint. And they call in that, let's just use speeding, for example, a particular area of town that identifies they've got a lot of speeders. We'll send the volunteers out to do testing. They'll go out with a radar, sample the traffic, and that kind of then will identify, hey, yeah, we saw 150 cars and 80 of them were speeding, or we saw 150 cars and one was speeding. Then we'll apply it to our Sergeant Koopman and our traffic section, and our traffic team. They have a number of duties that they fulfill, but they get out there and then they'll do a specific kind of targeted enforcement in that area. And we have a lot of officers who are very interested in traffic enforcement, and we'll do that as well. But sometimes, I get calls where people say, I saw a car in the parking lot for an hour and a half, and they were doing nothing. But people just don't understand, our officers use the car as their office. So we encourage them to use the laptop in the car to do the reporting, so they don't have to come to the station, and then they may position themselves at a high traffic intersection. So people see the car, but the officer's working on their laptop. So it's a double-edged sword, because the officer's working on the laptop and then the car's there and someone runs a red light and everybody's looking going, what's the officer? He's doing nothing, but he's unfortunately doing a report. So we try and do those kind of things, targeted enforcement. And I know the city's taken the issue with the community zones and photo radar and things like that. That's all great stuff. And working together, we'll continue to do as what we can, but don't hesitate in reporting issues, because we will get out and have a look at it.
Go ahead, Christian.
Chief, this may perhaps not be a question for today, but perhaps for a future meeting. So I appreciate the way we're shifting policing in the downtown area to a more proactive approach. That's a really important I think, model in terms of trying to move the goalposts. What are we doing to work with private property owners where we have repeat offenses? I can give a number of sort of examples, but multiplex, downtown area, repeated break-ins into cars in the back, police get called. But you know, it's tucked away, it's dark. You know, it's a perfect sort of criminogenic context.
Mhm.
And I sense, you know, just knowing some of the people there, there's some frustration about there's no action by the property owner. And to some extent, it's us that end up as the community that ends up eating the costs for property owners that don't make the proactive investments of getting proper lights up and the like. And whether we have a proactive program either through police or through the city to work with private property owners to make sure that they understand they might not necessarily be talking to all their apartment, their renters and owners and so forth, but that we work proactively with them to say like, look, we have a pattern of a problem
Mhm.
associated with your particular property, your particular building, and we're going to need to encourage you, incentivize you, whatever the measures of the rule of law are that are available to us to make changes so that we basically don't need the cost for security investments in there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great example because we do see that a lot. And part of our strategic plan was to increase the number of officers and volunteers who are able to perform crime prevention through environmental design audits. And I encourage everyone, if you're a property owner and you're suffering from those type of issues, we will do that at no charge to you. Come out and give you recommendations to make your property safer. And like I say, the term we can often use is target hardening. And we work with people. Lock your car doors. Don't leave your wallet and laptop in your car. All of those type of things. And then what we can also do is work with the property owners to say, hey, if you increase the lighting and you trim your hedges here, you know, and this could also make you, it can deter a criminal from possibly conducting their criminality on your property. And then we can also, what we find a lot of the time, it's the same people. Recidivism is massive. It's the same people doing it. So we end up setting up, whether we use our street crime team or we use other people, we catch the same person doing repeated offenses, and then we've shifted our tactic to enforcement. And not that enforcement was never there before, but we were giving other agencies an opportunity to work with these people because we know that jail is not the answer. Jail is not going to make them stop committing crimes, but it will give the property owner a break for a period of time while they're not available to commit their crime. And then at some point, hopefully, they will access resources that are available to address the root cause, which is really why they're going out to commit the crime. But we're a long way from that. So working with property owners, arresting the people who are committing the crime, and then what we're doing is putting area restrictions on them that they can't be in that specific area. And what does that do? And, you know, we can look back in 30 years of policing. By putting area restrictions on, you just move the problem elsewhere. And eventually, however, your authorities to make arrests or apprehensions are still there. And when people are doing that, the repeated kind of in and out oftentimes can result down the road in a custodial sentence. And then you're hoping they'll access resources so they prevent from doing it again. So there are some things, it's certainly, there's no crystal ball, but I encourage business owners and things, you know, to, if you got a commercial property and you do see those things, we're happy to come out and do an audit. And there's a number of things we can and can't do, but we're happy to work with you on those things.
Thanks.
The next report is on public complaints. And the report itself, completed by our professional standards group, obviously has a lot of information. We wanted to put a lot of information because things have changed with the OIPRD no longer exists, the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, and it's been replaced by the law enforcement, the LECA, Law Enforcement Complaints Agency. And so we wanted to put in a bunch of information so the public is aware if you want to make a complaint, how you can make that complaint, what the process is, how things are screened in, how they're evaluated. And our numbers are there for you to see that obviously we have a total of 22 complaints that range from unsubstantiated to screened out by the LECA. And we're in a unique situation where earlier in the year it was OIPRD. After April, it was LECA. So we're kind of working with both. We've had some that were withdrawn in formal resolution, and then we have some that are under investigation, not yet concluded as at the time of this report. So we continue to take complaints seriously, obviously investigate those complaints as per legislation, as per our requirement. And we wanted to just ensure our quarterly report reflects that and the information contained on what the actual complaint system looks like. And our last report, if there's no questions on complaints, is Queen's move-in. And of course, you know, we've, the students are back and really Queen's move-in isn't the real proper terminology, but post-secondary institution move-in. However, the area of the Queen seems to be the hotspot. So, I want to certainly take a moment to applaud our PLT team, our police liaison teams, who've been hitting the ground running, continuing our education that we started over a year ago, for the last couple of years now, educating the students. That's having a tremendous impact. The collaboration with Queen's University, Patrick Dean and myself communicating what the expectations are. They're sharing that with us. We're sharing with them. The student population, which, hey, it's some people, it's their first year, but the second, third, and fourth years are educating the first years, which we love to see, and we hear them talking about it. And of course, our staff who are, been doing this for a lot of years, but we're having a lot of commentary from our staff just about the change in attitude. It's not an us versus them. I think we're really relaying the message that we understand this is a neighborhood. There's expectations from the neighbors. We know you're here to have fun. We want to make sure everybody's safe. And I think the student population is really kind of understanding that now. So we're certainly seeing it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And I know that the officers have commented that it's much better than what it used to be in regards to the attitude of the students. And there's always the one-offs, but when the one-off was everyone, it becomes more than anything. So there are a number of offenses that have been that have been identified and tickets issued and things like that. And once again, we're working closely with the city and bylaw and Queen's Security, who work well with us too. So we'll continue that. We have been doing the upstaffing, but there is a lot of students, and but at the end of the day, we're seeing the activities are not, I guess the term we would use is celebratory, where people are jovial and celebratory. They're not angry and breaking things and fighting. And so we're just working on the projectiles and open alcohol and beer cans and beer bottles and things like that. Leave all that stuff at home. But certainly my hat's off to our team here for all the hard work they're putting into it, and to Queens and the students that are all part and parcel. So we'll keep you updated on all of that. And I think most importantly for the board is the very last line in my report, that cost of the weekend came to 23,489, which was a 55.5% reduction to last year. So we're working on that. We've heard the community, we've heard the board, and our staff are doing a really diligent job. It's not easy because, obviously it's anytime when we're reducing costs, there's certainly questions, and we're trying to answer our staff's questions and I can't applaud them enough. They've been outstanding. So we're very fortunate in Kingston to have the men and women that work out there and the supportive team behind them, because it impresses me every day. So, and I get to work in it. So I might be a little biased, but not that much, but they're doing a tremendous job.
Go ahead.
It's not a question, it's some more comments. I want to appreciate the chief for the report, and I want to thank you to the police, the members of the police service, and our bylaw officer and the city staff, and all of you, the people who are behind this, to making things possible, getting better. For personal, on my personal level, I have talked to so many students. They are also very satisfied, and I met a lot of community members living around while I'm delivering pizzas. So I'm just asked them, how's the things going? They're pretty happy. And especially you said that cost reduction as well is also making me happy. So as a city councillor, board member, I want to appreciate all of you who's behind to make things better and possible. Thank you.
And if I could just indulge for 1 second, because I know people are probably asking, why do we have our red shirts on today? And all part and parcel with the community, that it was a campaign kickoff for the United Way with us today. And my thanks to the board for allowing our staff and board members to put their red shirts on. I'm sorry, I meant to say that earlier and totally forgot.
All good, for a good cause. Some of our t-shirts didn't fit. So, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna need a motion to accept all those reports First or seconder, Christian, Jimmy, all in favor? Thank you. Then there's a recommendation report. Do you want to do it? You want me to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
So commendation of merit that the Kingston Police Service Board issue a board commendation of merit in accordance with Section 2C of the Kingston Police Service Board commendation policy to Shanna Stass, Acting Staff Sergeant Clement Nasiagnum, Constable Valerie Herding, Sergeant James Veltman, and Detective Constable Stacy Allery, Stephen Rhines, Elaine Lapierre, Adam Slate, Brian Hanwell, Andrew Wilby, and Jonathan Cerruti. I would ask for a motion for that. Gail, Jimmy, all in favor? Thank you. Very good. And then next, there's a bylaw number 2402, court security, that the board adopt and pass bylaw number 2402, a copy of which attached here to being the bylaw with respect to the court security. Okay. Motion, first or seconder, Gail, Christian, all in favor? Thank you. And then ratification of motion is the Next Generation 911 NG 2024-2025 grant application that the Kingston Police Service Board ratify the motion passed by the poll of a quorum of the board members on August 21st, 2024, pending the next public board meeting, that the Kingston Police Service Board approve the grant application with respect to the Next Generation 911 NG 911 2024-2025 grant application was prepared by Acting Deputy Chief Lillian Murdoch, and that the board authorized the chair and or his delegate to execute the Next Generation 911 2024-2025 grant application on behalf of the board. First or seconder? Any questions? Good. Okay, Christian, worship, all in favor? Thank you. And then new business, board size under the Community Safety and Policing Act, CSPA. The chair invites Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to inform the board that at our next council meeting on October the 1st, that I'll be bringing forward a motion to expand the membership of the police board from 5 to 7. I think it's a comment on the importance of public safety as a political issue in our community. I think it's a reflection of we have a growing community and there are increasing number of issues and things we need to talk about, and also a reflection of just the complexity of many of the issues that we are dealing with. And so I wanted to inform the board of that. Myself and Councillor Ridge will be bringing forward the motion. So we'll obviously have a discussion at council, but then we'll be taking steps forward to expand the board from there. So happy to take any questions.
And is it correct that the board of 7 breakdown of that would be 3 provincial appointees, 3 city councillors, and 1 community member?
That's
right. Okay. Any questions from the? No? Okay. Thank you. And that it's, we don't have to do a motion or anything for that? No. CAPG annual conference highlights. I'm going to ask that the 3 of us that went to Halifax to the CAPG conference, if what they had learned from attending the conference in Halifax. Christian, you want to start?
Well, we had among other things, we had a panel dealing with issues of emergency response, in particular to issues such as climate change, wildfires, mass evacuations, protests, encampments, and the like, and some opportunity to share some of the experiences across the country and the great payoff of CAPG, of course. So this is the meeting of police services board members, and while it has some representation from chiefs and from other services, it's primarily other board members. The value of being able to exchange experiences across the country, since municipalities all seem to be struggling. The things that we discuss here are bedeviling all the other municipalities and to learn how they are responding with tight financial constraints and the expanding responsibilities, such as sort of emergency response to non-traditional events, and posturing us sustainably and robustly, I think, for the future. There's a, I think, significant benefit and payoff for the Kingston community in terms of what we can learn and that we can then also introduce as part of the budget process to continue to innovate, be efficient, economical, and ensure we meet our obligations for adequate and effective policing.
Jimmy, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The conference, I was there first time. It was a great experience to meet with a lot of board members, different chairs. But my focus was during the conference, I want to see what kind of common issues we have around the country. And we found there's more common issues in every meeting we have, every workshop we have. It was most focused on homelessness, addictions, and the drugs. So not only use it, but the trafficking. And I learned that on the conference, the most thing we heard, it was where most successful stories we got on the dais or on the stage, but not the failure. So I wish that conference can also highlight some of the failure, some of the police, the smaller police board, their struggles that they can highlight. That was only the lack of that. It was no one was talking about like we are the smaller board compared to Halton or Durham region. Then their issues are very similar to us, but the way we handling it is a resource difference. You know, we can't do whatever they was telling us what they are doing it. But it was a lot. It was nothing new to learn, but it was good to know that the police services board and police community is around the country as facing the same challenges as of today, what we facing in Kingston. So it was a good conference, and I have learned a lot. So meeting a lot of chiefs and talking to them how they're doing it. It just only I didn't find out because many of them so big and many of them smaller than us. So I don't know how we compare ourselves with bigger or smaller than us.
So I found, and I might get in trouble for this, but I was really concerned in the sense that the Big 10 services in Ontario don't really have a budget. They just spend, and they can afford to do that, so they say. But the Midtown or the mid-size, Kingston, and the smaller police services are going to have a real challenge if expected to keep that kind of pace. I heard some of the percentages of their budgets going up just starting next year, and it's going to freak people out. It's going to freak Kingstonians out if we have to follow that. And that is a real concern because when you're looking at this, cost of living is not a concept from police service to police service, where you live, how nice it is. It's basically, we want what they have, and that's going to be a super big challenge for Kingston. Just that's what's coming down the pipe. On to the next. Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Just under new business, just adding a quick thing here. Last week, we hosted a human trafficking conference here in Kingston, which had just a little over 200 delegates. Tamaya Nagy, who's a survivor of human trafficking and a huge advocate, was here. We're fortunate Acting Inspector Jeff Thompson and Tamaya have an ongoing friendship, and so they worked really hard to bring that here. TJ Romaniuk and Amanda Lupachuk and Sergeant Gronewagen working on our human trafficking strategy. We had showcased Kingston for 3 days, had excellent feedback from the conference, and I want to thank everybody for putting it together. There was a lot of sponsorship. The Criminal Intelligence Service of Ontario sponsored for us as well, and we were very fortunate to have it here. Brought everybody from all different kind of backgrounds and kind of careers together, for whether it was fraud, whether it was clergy, whether it was law enforcement, whether victim services, just goes on and on and on. Very rare to see all of those people in one room. I had the fortune to go and just say welcome to everybody, and I was impressed to see it, and a great job by our staff in putting it together. Thank you very much, and it was a showcase for Kingston for sure.
Well done on that. And the people that worked on this, may I say, the court security did a really good job as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and that note, we're going to move to in camera. And may I have a first or seconder? Oh,
Sure,
sorry,
can
go
I-
ahead.
2 points. One is, of course, that the Premier has made human trafficking one of the priorities for the Ontario government. So it's very nice to see Kingston leading on to show that a local and medium-sized service like Kingston can provide the synergies and leadership, and to understand that not all problems need to be solved necessarily and led by large services, and that these challenges manifest differently in different types of communities, and also what we can do with fewer resources. If you allow, Chair, I'd like to circle back to one piece of the communications at the beginning. This is simply an observation, I think, in light of that we're entering the budget process. The first communication relates to the transfer of responsibilities for sexual offenses from the military to local services. And while the communication briefs us on the MOU, I believe there is still no cost recovery. As yet another example of other levels of government, in this case the federal government, making decisions that ultimately save them money, but the investigations still need to be run, and that ultimately local taxpayers are footing the bill, while the federal government is able to cut its expenses on the backs of local taxpayers. And so I'm looking forward during the budgeting process of, like we did last year, breaking down the actual costs to our community with a fairly significantly sized base of that decision by the federal government, without, so far, I believe, a single cent of compensation to provinces or municipalities in Ontario or anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, certainly. And great point, because that is something we have Inspector Brian Pete, Deputy Chief Matt Funnell, sit on the working group on that. And, you are right, because it's the Canadian Armed Forces. And if it's reported in Kingston and one victim's in Newfoundland and another victim's in Victoria, or a witness and things like that, the costs are, people just say, oh, it's just an investigation. Well, the costs are staggering, and it's going to be interesting. And I don't know if Deputy Chief Funnell wants to add anything, because I know they've had some meetings in regards to it, or.
Thank you, Chief, and for the question. And not a whole lot to add other than, like the Chief said, Inspector Pete and I are part of the working group. Share your frustration with how this is being drilled down and forced upon us with literally no funding envelope to go with it, and not enough conversation about the impact on the victims as well, and trying to do this right. So really what we're trying to do, municipal services are going to try our best to get together, talk outside of the group, just so we ensure that we have common interests going into the discussions. But it is frustrating to see how it's being drilled from the top down, so to speak, and we really have to fight hard to see that our interests and not only for the taxpayer, but for our staff and how we have to approach it, that things are done properly. So it's a work in progress.
Gail, please.
So you may or may not have the answer to this question yet, but if a serving member of the armed forces is charged on the civilian side, and if those things if the charges come to fruition and that person is to be incarcerated, who has authority to take a serving officer or a member of the armed forces? Do they get or does a whole other process end up having to take place? So I'm not sure if there's complexities around the law there at all, that, who's on first with this. They've delegated all of this to municipalities, but then the outcome of it, the court martial process, presumably, Christian, you may have, or it may just not be for this meeting.
Well,
If-
just quickly, there's still a lot of things to work out about whether charges will be dealt with in the military justice system or the civilian justice system. And of course, then comes with that a whole host of jurisdictional issues. For example, offenders offend all across the land, as we know. So it'll be a huge discussion territorially about who's going to take the lead on the prosecution, where those charges will be heard and tried, all that kind of thing. And that's a procedural thing in the justice system that we still has to be worked out. I mean, this was great in concept, but trying to put it into play has been very complicated.
And I think Matt hit on something that's really important, the victim. And that's really where it comes down. There's the politics around everything, but really, in essence, our goal, we are speaking on behalf of the victims, and we want to do what's best for the victims. And that's always paramount with our officers when they're at these meetings as well.
Did you want to?
Yeah.
The answer is both complicated and easy. Once this is transferred over to be dealt with in the civil system, the usual rules of jurisdiction, which will have to do with where the place of the crime, the location, the preponderance of evidence and that sort of thing. So that will sort itself in much the same manner as any other complex file. So you can think of files where, let's say you've got organized crime in different cities and things. So that will get sorted out between prosecutors. Sexual violence is generally speaking a Ministry of the Attorney General at the Ontario level. So those are likely to be the Crown prosecutors engaged. There isn't a lot of that expertise except in the North federally. So again, criminal code offenses are handled by provincial prosecutors unless some sort of delegation occurs to hand it over there. This conversation has been going on for over 30 years with the military. And ever since Somalia and the way in which that was managed, and at the very end, there was an attempt to transfer it to the civil system, but it took too long. And the logistics of where they'll be jailed is a different issue. And then internally, whether and how they face their own professional conduct, that will remain a matter for the military to deal with. Does that help? But it's crazy. It's going to be expensive for us because you have the whole base here. And bases have humans and humans do things.
Thank you. Okay, then on that note, we're first or second here for moving into in camera. Christian, Gail, all in favor, thank you. We're not going to take any time. We're going to allow these nice folks to leave, and then we're going to go right into the in camera. So stick around, don't go too far.